What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Folks, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share, like this thing out, comment. So who are we talking to today on the Nightmare Success podcast? It's somebody that I have really been looking forward to talking to, because it's somebody that I admire, that I watch every day on Instagram. So and the reason why I say this is, you all know that listen to this program, it's all about how do you handle your story? Do you own your story or do you hide your story? And if you own your story, then that means that someone else doesn't own it. And I'm interviewing Mathew Bowyer here today. He's 50 years old. I know that he turned over that big 5-0. I think it was last August. He's married, father of 5, and Matt became involved in one of the biggest sports stories of recent memory. The story captivated our nation and Japan, and it was Ohtani from the LA Dodgers, nicknamed Showtime, designated hitter and pitcher. I think everybody who knows baseball knows that name.
Right.
And his business partner and interpreter, it's Epi Mazura, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but that's what I do. I pronounce things wrong. But Mazura put in bets using Shohtani's money through Matt Bowyer, and Matt was operating one of the biggest sporting bets businesses in the nation, unlicensed, and all that going on, he pled guilty in August. Sports betting, which ended up being money laundering, which ended up being a false tax return. What's interesting about all this, and he's in no man's land, waiting to be sentenced in October. And so most people in no man's land just don't do anything. It's truly like dead man walking. Matt has done exactly the opposite of that. He started, if you want to follow him, at Mathew Bowyer 5 on Instagram, you will be inspired by the things that he's doing and the things that he's sharing. He's working on a book that'll be out. It's called Recalibrate. He's working on a documentary series about his fascinating life journey through all of what he's done. When he gets out, he's already thinking about when he gets out and gets around all of this. He wants to be a mentor, a coach to people in the NFL and Major League Baseball, of how he can teach people not to fall into the addictions of the sports betting, and how to write yourself into the path to stay away from things that can hurt you, living through his own life experiences. It's quite a story, and I can't wait to jump into all that. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Mathew Bowyer, welcome in. How are you, my man?
I'm living a dream. We're fighting the fight. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast.
And I appreciate that, Mathew. It's an honor to have you on, and I've been looking forward to it. And I know one of the things that you said, and one of the things that you've posted and talked about is that going through this horrific experience of being totally exposed in a national story, and it's about your kids, it's about your family, it's about your life. You want them to know, how did dad handle this? You know, did he curl up, or did he grit it out? Did he did he do whatever he had to do to survive and not be a victim? And there's a huge difference between the two. And I think what you've done in the time period, I think it's like the last 6 months, your Instagram thing has exploded to like over 85,000 people last time I looked. Might be
Right.
more than that. Might be more than that now because it's growing so fast. But there's something about why people are tuning into you. And I think it's being able to follow your journey, your authenticity, your vulnerability of saying, hey, here I am. Here's what's going on with me. It's not easy. It's a nightmare, but I'm putting it all out there for everybody to see. But it's also giving everybody an opportunity to say, well, hell, if Matt can do that, maybe I should do that. So, Matt, I know a lot of people know a little bit about your story, but let's take them back.
Sure.
Where were you as little Matt growing up? Mom, dad, where did all that take place?
I appreciate it. It's a great question. I grew up in Cypress, California, which is in Orange County. I would say an upper middle class neighborhood. We lived a great life. I have three brothers. And so having four boys in a household was chaotic for my mom. And my parents ran a bail bonds business called Bowyer Bail Bonds. Ironically, they were bailing people out of jail, which is funny.
Wow. I did not know. I did a lot of research. I did not know that.
Yeah. And, my dad was an entrepreneur, very successful. He owned an air tool supply company as well. And, they had that hustle to them, both of them, but also were focused on raising kids. And the problem is early on in my childhood, my dad was a Vietnam vet, and he had a little trauma from that, losing a lot of people and friends in the war. And so, he started developing a really bad drinking problem, and it got so bad, he was a full blown alcoholic. I would say probably maybe when I was about 8 to 10 years old. And then,
Did you recognize it, Matt, as a kid?
yeah, I did, but I didn't understand it, because my dad was a guy who would drink literally 24 to 40 beers a day, and he was never really drunk. It was like you're drinking water to him.
Mm.
And I recognized it because it was very odd that I would go grab him a beer. You know, he was pretty lazy, to be honest. Like, he was a hardworking guy, but he became very lazy. And he would say, "Hey, Matt, grab me a beer." And I heard that 20 times a day sometimes, or my little brother. And, he would just sit by his bed and wait for the phone to ring for bail bonds, which back then they had yellow pages. And the job actually hurt him because he was so stationary and bored, even though he made a lot of money and did very well. So sitting around watching movies or TV and just drinking and smoking cigarettes all day was his life. And he was really, he had a great charismatic personality. So he was able to give the facade of, there wasn't a drinking problem because he was never wasted or, able to function. He was a very functioning alcoholic. But it proceeded to get worse. And my mom, after we did about 3 or 4 rehabs, she had enough. So at 12, and let me go backwards. For the first 12 years of my life, we were the kids that got everything we wanted. I mean, within reason.
Yeah.
You join a baseball team, we get a brand new bat, brand new glove. We had a river house, we had a boat, we had jet skis. So we had all these toys and material things. And my parents were great. They got along great. But once the alcohol became really bad, the, fighting and stuff started happening. My dad was never violent or, he was just more of a combative in a sense of like, I don't have a problem. And as you know, the first thing you need to do in life is, if you have a problem, is, recognize it. Mm-hmm. So that never happened. And so my mom, after about 3 or 4 rehabs, she threw in the towel. So I remember when I was 12 years old, I was in my mom's bed after my dad was kicked out, helping her because she was crying and handling the phone calls from my dad over and over again, wasted, trying to, get back in and work it out. And that was a little traumatic for me because I didn't realize the damage maybe that it did for me later in life.
A lot of
But
trauma for you.
yeah, and it was hard because I was, my older brother was like 16, 17 at the time. My other older brother was like 18. They were in high school or graduating. One was going to the Coast Guard. And then my little brother was too young. He was like 8 or 7. And so like, I was kind of the one who understood it the most at that time frame or cared the most. Mm-hmm. And so My older brothers were adopted by my dad when they were 2 and 4. My mom had a previous relationship that didn't work out. So my dad raised them, but I can tell that the love for me and my little brother, who were, natural children, was a little stronger. And
Mhm.
sadly, I think that's common. You know, it's hard to understand that unless you've been in that predicament. But moral of the story is, my two older brothers were checked out. They were over my dad, and I understand why. So me and my little brother were kind of, in the house. We're young, and my mom had to go to work. I mean, she was already working, but running the bail bonds business, because my dad was starting to kind of, they were both fighting for that business, and my dad was becoming more of an actual drunk at that point. So, then it was harder for him to actually work. So I watched the fight in my mom and the hustle to maintain and keep us in that house, by her hustling and doing creative cakes by Linda, which is a making cakes, Jaffa products. I mean, any hustle she could do. She became a kidney dialysis technician. There were so many things that she was doing, and I had so much respect for her, to just fight. So I think that's where something shifted in me. I was kind of a shy kid up until about
Yeah.
12, and then I realized I always had kind of my dad's personality. So I was outgoing, but it didn't come out really until I was 12. And then that's when I turned into what I consider to be a straight hustler. And I say that in a positive. I mean, there's moments where it turned out to be a negative, right? It's probably why I'm sitting here talking to you today about this.
Well, no, but
Um,
I think that's interesting though, because your role model in that situation was seeing your mom do whatever she had to do
yeah,
to get out there and make things work, and you saw that at an age that you got it, you understood it.
I did. And my work ethic was definitely, brought from that moment. The idea of hustling and finding ways to make money instantly became an entrepreneur. At 12 years old, you don't even know how to run a business. But I learned quickly, because at 14, at 12, I started delivering the Orange County Register, the newspaper. I was a paper boy.
Mhm.
And so at 14, I was selling the Orange County Register at night, in the neighborhood. So we'd have this woman named Paula that would come by and pick us up. She worked for the Orange County Register, which is a big paper here in
Yeah.
Orange County. And she'd come by and pick up about 7 kids in a white Bronco. She'd pick us up at our house, drop us off in apartment complexes or neighborhoods, homes, and say, "Hey, I'll come get you in 45 minutes. Hit this neighborhood up." So most of the kids were, I was kind of the younger side. They're like 14 to 18. It was a great job for a young kid in high school.
Yeah.
And basically, you would go door to door and sell the newspaper. And I became the best of that in all of Orange County very quickly, to the point where I won a trip to my mom out of all the kids in the entire county to go to Hawaii. I was like, my goal was just to, watching her work so hard, I wanted to send her on this trip. And I sold the most newspapers in Orange County for month after month. And I just had this grit where I wouldn't let you close the door on me. If you opened the door, you were buying the paper.
Yeah.
And there's no way. I mean, I would hit you with guilt. I'd hit you with why you need the paper. I mean,
Yeah.
I had it down. I mean, I would tell people, look, I'll never forget it because it was part of my sales tactic. Back then they had coupons in the paper, and, comics, right? And the newspapers kind of died off. And as you know,
Right.
nowadays with the internet, but that was our only format of that other than watching the news. So I would say, look, Brent, it's $7 for the Orange County Register a month. It was $6.99 back then.
Mhm.
I said, I equated it down to what it was per day, and I said, listen, these coupons alone, you're going to make more than $7 back on this. You're going to go to a soup plantation or some
Uh-huh.
restaurant. You're going to save money here. I would break it all down. I said, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't do this. I said, but never mind that. Let's say you don't want to do the paper. If you take the paper for 30 days and you cancel it, I still get credit for the sale. How can you tell a 14-year-old kid who's trying to win a trip for his mom to Hawaii that you can't spend $7?
I
And
love that.
it was really tough for them to say no to that. And I would just grind them. And I was being honest. It was really what. And so I would use my sales and guilt and everything possible to get the sale. And it ended up being like, if they opened the door, I was closing 80% of them, and
I I,
nobody.
lo- I love that story because I think you learn so much in sales and especially at that age, 14, 15 years old. Because my dad had a sales company, and I was 15 years old, and he gave me these big sheets at that time. You're 50, I'm 58. They had these big sheets, and they had phone numbers on them.
Uh huh.
And so my deal was is I had to call and set up appointments for these salespeople. And so if I could set the appointment, it'd be one thing. If they could actually go inside and making a
Right.
presentation, then I could get a override off of what they did.
Okay.
And so it was total cold calls. I
Yeah.
mean, just it was an age bracket. That's all it was. And so it's funny how you learn like word patterns and stuff. Because I still to this day I could say, Mr. Bowyer, hey, it's Brent Cassity. I'm calling you from Fitzinger Funeral Home. I got to apologize to you. I was supposed to get some information out to you yesterday, and I ran out of time. Would the morning or afternoon be better for you? And what I found was this is after trying this a whole bunch. People would accept a something from me if I was late, and I apologize.
Right.
And
Right.
when I got older, I found out that that still worked. But it was funny how those type of things, like you just breaking it down, and
Sure.
you use that the rest of your life.
No question. Dropping their guard is what you did, right? You're taking some accountability right away. They
Right.
already respect you for that. I think not only have I used it my whole life, I've used it to this day. Naturally, I go places and I'm not even selling something, but I am, right? You don't realize it.
Right.
We're always selling
You're
ourselves, our
always selling
person.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, even if you don't mean to, right? So I have used those tools to this day, and I'll never forget it. I'm beyond
Well,
grateful for that.
Matt, when you won that the Hawaii trip, did you go with your mom on the Hawaii trip, or
No, I
you?
didn't. I let her take. I knew she would have more fun. So she took a girlfriend with her. So they're allowed two people to go. And I said, "Mom, just you need a vacation. Like, what am I going to do? Just go have fun with your girlfriend." So I'll never forget it because it was to Waikiki, which I've still never been to actually. And she was like crying. And it was just a great moment for me at 14
Yeah.
to give my mom something back. And I learned at that point I just didn't never wanted to ask her for money for anything anymore. So that was my goal, is to take the burden off of her as much as possible. My mom is like an angel, probably the nicest, kindest human being in the world, and I mean that. Of course, most people think that whatever their kid's the best athlete, they're this, whatever. But
Yeah.
my mom is. I could line up 1,000 people, and they'd all say that there's no bad bone in her, or mean bone. And that being said, it was just kind to give back to her. But that was the start. That was the start of like my hustle journey, and then finding ways to really make money, because at 16 I was probably making more money than my mom was. Truly,
Yeah.
like I was hustling, which when you're a sophomore in high school, I was running a poker ring. I was selling weed. I've never done drugs in my life. I was selling marijuana out of the gas station I worked at, and I was just doing everything possible. I built a baseball card collection by delivering the paper route. So I would learn to, when I would go deliver the paper, if I seen a young kid or older kid, whatever, having, playing outside, I'd say, "Hey, Brent, do you have any baseball cards?" And they'd say, "Yeah." And I'd say, "Well, ironically, I have a bunch on me. Are you interested in doing some trades?" And 90% of the time, they didn't understand the value of a Ken Griffey Jr. and a Roger Clemens rookie or whatever. So I would, present 50 cards to their two or three. And even though their cards were commons, they were nothing really, 3 cents a piece. They felt like they're getting a great deal. And of course, I was hustling. Maybe the wrong message, but at that time it was me or them, and that's the way I chose. But I didn't always make the best choices, which is again why I'm in this predicament today. But I do believe when you make poor choices, or even if you sometimes put your morals out of the way, which I have, you got to learn from it and grow. And which we'll get into my current situation. But at that time, like, my job was hustle, figure it out, and that's what I felt, at least. So morally, that might have been incorrect, but I felt like it was the thing to do. And to be honest with you, it's a world of we all survive, and you got to figure it out. So
Sure.
maybe I taught that kid a lesson, hopefully. But so I ended up building this baseball card collection. At 16, I bought my truck for myself. My mom didn't give me $1, and it was a Mazda B 2000. It was $3,500, and I got it painted and put rims and tires on it, and it was like
Uh-huh.
$5,000, $6,000, which go
Yeah.
back,
You were
35 years
styling.
ago.
You were
What's
styling.
a lot of money 35 years ago. And it was cool because I didn't have to ask my mom for anything, really. So that hustle led me to some poor decisions later. I got kicked out of my house at 18 for selling weed. I got caught for doing that, and that was another growing experiment and embarrassing to my mother. But another thing that kind of led me to the path of hustling even more, and kind of choosing the right side of things of how to make money. Because then I went to work legally, as opposed to selling baseball, or excuse me, selling marijuana.
Yeah.
And I sold my baseball card collection, and I had to rehustle. But I still, even at that time, from like 16 years old on, I was always involved in sports betting and sports gambling. Even at a small level, $20, $30, whatever. I was kind of like the local kid that always that people knew that I had. I would call it big balls. They would call me so elephant balls, to be honest. So I would take bets regardless of my situation. And back then, if it was $100 bet when you're 16 years old, that was a huge amount of money.
Sure.
But everyone knew I would take a bet like that, and so we would gamble on everything. I was running a poker ring in my house, which got busted by a mom. One of the local kid neighborhood had a thing in his pocket, an IOU list to me for like $340. So the moms had an intervention at my house, and my mom was embarrassed about that. So I had to shut down the poker ring. But anything to try to make money. And truly, the fast buck technique, I call it, it has always been there for me, and that's a bad situation, because I've always reached for the quicker, easier dollar, and that's what led me to running my business to the level I did. But I don't want my kids to have that same lesson. I want them to work harder and do it the right way, obviously. And we all get drawn into the easy dollars. I mean, in life, but I'm not a victim. I chose my path, and now I'm dealing with that. But at 16, when I finally was really making decent money for a 16-year-old kid, almost as much as like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like anyone. I would spend money on stupid things, and have go out and buy things that were unnecessary. So that also developed, which was bad, because I think I've carried that on to even today. I had multiple Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis, and I had all these cars and things that were really, don't get me wrong, they were nice,
Yeah.
but was it
Material
really?
things.
Yeah, was it really necessary? When I had to get rid of all that, it was a little pride swallowing for a minute, but it was also like, really, do you really need that stuff? I mean, again, I plan on actually buying that stuff again. I'm not going to lie, because I do have an
Yeah.
ego, but I'll buy it. I definitely do, but I'll buy it for the right reasons. It's more of a comeback story. My plan is to go out and buy the Rolls Royce that I ended up selling that I didn't want to,
Yeah.
but feeling good about driving it, not feeling like, I
Right.
don't even deserve this. So,
I'm curious, how did this, when you got into the poker stuff and everything else, you get into your 20s, how does this ramp into or does it, or do you, what are you thinking when you're at that age? Are you thinking I can scale up, hustle myself into a, a, a betting bazaar as big as the nation? Or are you thinking I'm going into trading, or what's in your mind?
yeah, it's funny. I never envisioned sitting here today, but I also did, meaning having the business to where it was. So, like,
Mhm.
anything I've ever initiated in life since I was probably, I don't know, 12, or ever since that kind of a traumatic experience, I've always known that I could be number one. So I've always had the mindset of I can outwork people, I can outsell for sure. And there's no reason that I can't be better than the next person or all of them. And I think that's a mindset thing. David Goggins didn't go out and run Ironman marathons and back to back do all these crazy things because he was, at one point he was really fat and lazy. I mean, so it's all here. And once we realize that, no matter what we're dealing with in life, I feel like you can really accomplish. I know it sounds cliche, but you really can do whatever you want. And Michael Phelps was the best swimmer, right? And it wasn't, of course, he's athletic. Of course, he's a beast. And of course, he's got the body and all those things. But you still have to have the mindset to be number one in the world and to be an Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
And I use those examples because you or I could have been that swimmer. We just don't know it. We never probably put the effort or the time or, and of course, some things you can't do because you genetically you don't have the
Right.
same abilities. But really, for the most part, we can do almost anything we want. We're not 7 feet tall. We're not going to be centers in the NBA, but we could have been a point guard. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do.
Mhm.
But back to myself, when I was really about 18, 19, I worked at the racetrack in Los Alamitos for a little while, selling programs, hustling. So the gambling, my grandparents they were fairly not wealthy, but well off. So when we go to their house, they had a beautiful home, and we would play Yahtzee for money. and as a family. I mean, I was 6 years old doing that, and I mean small money, dollars or whatever.
Right.
But my grandparents really instilled gambling in us, not on purpose, more as a fun, just
More of a game.
yes.
Yeah.
But it brought us together, which is kind of my message about gambling, which I'll get into later. You know, gambling is not all taboo and it's not all great. It's there's,
Mhm.
you know, if you can bring people together and entertain and have fun and it's not out of control and there's you don't have an addictive personality and go off the deep end, there's nothing wrong with gambling. It's great.
Mhm.
Of course, the other side of that is ugly. But in my situation, gambling with the family, it was just brought us together, and it wasn't the amount of money; it was just the experience. So what happened to me is I started getting addicted to what I said earlier, the quick buck, and
Mhm.
so I'd go to the racetrack and start gambling, $200-300, which back then at 16 was huge, and I'd have a score, I'd make $1,000, which to me was gigantic, and then I'd go lose $300 eight more times, and I realized shit, I'm running out of money. But that addiction of winning that thousand, I was always superseding what was
Adrenaline
really
rush.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dopamine was just too much for me. So clearly in my family, the addictive gene is there strongly. My little brother is in jail right now, heroin addict. He's been dealing with drugs since he was 16.
Mm.
I think partially due to the trauma, again, back
Mhm.
when he was 8, what I was going through. Obviously, I have an addiction to gambling. My dad did to alcohol. So that could be an easy perception of just saying I'm a victim. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is that you have to overcome a little bit more
Mhm.
of situational awareness. But anyway, back to when I was younger, I didn't really develop my business in sports betting to a level of any competency until I was about 21.
Okay.
And the reason for that was I had never had any real money to take any bets, like real money. So I was always taking bets from friends and guys at school or whatever, but it was just because it was kind of feeding my addiction and, I'd make a few extra dollars. But right around, well, let me go backwards. At 18, I got kicked out of my house, as I explained to you, for selling weed. My first wife, who I'm now divorced with, who's a great friend of mine, we raised 3 kids together. We were in a relationship since we were 15. And at 18, we moved in an apartment together. And barely were, this really crappy apartment in Huntington Beach, very cheap. And I worked at 2 jobs. I worked at the airport, stocking the gift shops from 6 to 2,
Mhm.
and then from 2:30 I worked till 10 p.m. at Massimo Clothing Company,
Okay.
who ended up actually
Yeah.
having a prison sentence. Who I've met
Yes.
since, ironically. Justin hired him.
Yeah.
I mean, he hired Justin. And long story short, I was working these crazy hours for minimum wage, and I just knew that wasn't my future. And more importantly, I just knew that wasn't my life. So I would say we're about 6 months into that, and I think our lease was running up. And I told my girlfriend, or ended up being my wife, I think we should end the relationship. I'm just going nowhere, and we were saturated. And then she got pregnant.
Oh,
She told,
wow.
so now I was like, okay, we got a
You're
problem
19
here.
years old.
Yeah, well, we weren't even 19 yet. I was still
18 years
18.
old. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a child. I can't even figure out my own life. And now I'm going to bring a child in the world.
Yeah.
And so I decided to, of course, back then, the right thing to do, and especially then, was raise the baby, get married, etc. So we moved into my mom, who lost our home, mobile home park. Believe it or not, it was very demoralizing to watch your mom lose her home and then end up in a mobile home park, which,
Mm.
we were the type of family that, to be honest, looked down on that. I mean, we were, judgmental, to be real. You look at Eminem and you think like white trash, right? So in my mind, now we were deemed to be white trash. It's just the association I had with it. Doesn't mean you are. You could live anywhere, but
Right.
at that time in my mind, that was what my mind frame was. So we moved into a mobile home park. It's a double wide trailer in Dana Point, California,
Mhm.
where my mom and my little brother had bedrooms, and we didn't have one because it was 2 bedroom. So we were sleeping on the couch. So I quit my jobs and I said, I got to get a real job. Well, I couldn't find one because I was 18, no experience, no college education, and really had nothing other than a hustle to me. So there was a local restaurant opening called Chevy's, a Mexican restaurant,
Those
which was
Chevys.
a big chain, right? For a while, I think they're all out of business.
Yeah.
And so I went to the restaurant. It was a brand new community, Dana Point. They're opening. It was beautiful. And I realized that at 18, a waiter, the income is good for an 18-year-old kid as a
Mm-hmm.
waiter. It's not great for the long term, but it
Yeah.
pays bills, right? So I was like, oh, I'm just going to get a job here. So I go in there, I get interviewed, and they're like, you have no experience. We'll hire you as a busboy. And I said, a busboy? I was like, I need a job. I had to get one. So okay. So here I am serving chips and salsa. And about 2 months into the job, patrons were coming in, customers were coming in, and they're asking to sit in my section.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't have a section. I was a busboy. So the GM was realizing real quickly that I was outshining the waiters and waitresses because I was actually getting tipped more than they were. And it's hard to really get tips as a busboy. Your chips, salsa, water. But I would win people over with my personality, having conversations, picking up where the waiters or waitresses would screw up, fixing problems, whatever. And I knew that in this area, Dana Point was kind of a Laguna Niguel, Dana Point. There was a lot of money in that area. So I just saw people coming in that had nice watches, and you could just feel the atmosphere of money. And especially when I was 18. So I kept getting these customers asking to come in my section, so to speak. And I just built relationships. So they were about to promote me to waiter, and I got a job offer from one of the customers, and it was a couple. They were about, well, let's see, they were 28 years old, and he was very successful. I could tell. He had a British accent. He was Indian and well spoken. And he said to me, his wife actually is the one who said, "Why don't you come down to our company and we'd like to have an interview?" So of course I went to Marshall's and bought a cheap suit and tie, or not suit, but shirt and tie, and went down to this company in Irvine, California. And as I walked in, there was Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Mercedes and all these cars that I could ever dream of. And I had no idea what the heck it was. So I walk in there. It was very professional. Everyone's got suits, and you just had the vibe and the atmosphere of Wolf of Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I sit in these 3 interviews. I literally had 3 of them. Took over 3 weeks. And this guy just lit me up like a Christmas tree. I mean, he dissembled me every which way you could for an 18-year-old kid. Why didn't you go to college? You're having a baby. You have no future. Where's your work ethic? Just belittled me. And finally, after the third interview, I said to him, I said, why am I even here?
Yeah.
You pretty much have attacked me every which way. I don't understand really the value of you having me in your mind. Let me tell you something about me. There's no person in this company that's going to work harder than me.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you should want somebody like me. I'm grit. I'm everything that you need. And when I fought back, he hired me instantly, and he realized that I was willing to put in the grind. So
That's
what
a
I didn't
good tip.
realize,
It's a good
no,
interview tip.
yeah, it was great. It was awesome. I thought I was actually saying "c'est la vie" because
Yeah.
I just couldn't take it anymore, and I was like, because I took it. But the point of the story is when he hired me, I had no idea that the job was a mailroom job. It was $1,200 a month, which was actually big to me at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was 60 hours a week. And you worked in the mailroom, and then you worked directly for the owner. His name was Mickey Dillon. He's in my book, and he became my mentor. And the reason why I didn't know the value of the asset of this job was because I thought I was just going to be mailing stuff out of a mailroom.
Mm-hmm.
But the personal assistant, basically of being the CEO's position, was so valuable to this day. And what I learned was everything. I mean, I learned so much, right? And so I took this job so serious, which I have all my jobs. And what happened was when back then there was no internet, and it was a commodity brokerage firm.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even know what crude oil or pork bellies were, other than watching the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, right?
Right.
And
Great,
so
great movie.
it's a great movie, right? And it's exciting because what is commodity trading? It's legalized gambling.
That's all it
Like,
is.
I mean, let's be real.
Put your money in the market and watch it ride.
Yeah, and it's in a market where most people lose, but the ones who win make a lot. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very intrigued, not to mention the cars and the young guys that were just
Yeah.
making so much money. The average age there was probably 30 years old, and these guys were making money. Most of them were, hookers and blow and partying, and just Newport Beach kids just making so much money. And that intrigued me to a degree, but I was having a baby, I was committed to my ex-wife, and, I just wanted to make money. I never did drugs. I was never into that. But long story short, After working there for about 6 months, what I realized was I was the first contact from every new possible account, every new lead. They would call our company. They would immediately be transferred. I would kind of ask a few questions, transfer them to a broker of the day. And that broker of the day, based on their sales, how was best and who wasn't, would get a certain amount of leads. And back then we had headsets, and we would transfer the call, and I would stay on the call and hit mute, and I would just sponge the sales training. So I knew exactly, because I could always sell. I knew that, even the errors these guys were making, or more importantly, just learning what to say and what not to say, tonality, everything. And that training was the best thing that ever happened. Nobody knew I was doing it. They didn't know I was on the call. I was supposed to hang up. But as long as there was no new calls coming in, no valuable more experience than that. So fast forward, maybe another 2 months go by, and I studied for the Series 3 exam on my own, grabbed some copies of the books around the office. And even though I had no college experience, I wasn't really a big test taker. So I went to the owner and said, I want to take the exam. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm prepared.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, he says, well, you're not even an assistant broker. We don't offer exams to, unless you're an assistant broker actually doing the day-to-day job. And I said, well, here, I handed him a stack of flashcards. I said, well, ask me any question on the exam. And he asked me like 4 or 5 questions. And of course, I nailed them. And he said, wow, you've really been studying this. I said, I'll take it. And he goes, well, it's $450 for us to pay for the exam. We have to sponsor you. I don't want to do that. And I said, well, how about this? You could fire me if I don't pass. And then he knew how serious I was.
Wow.
And he said, you're willing to risk your job? And I said, you're damn right I am. I'm not going to sit here mailing this out the rest of my life. And he said, okay. So I took the exam. I got an 84 and a 73. You have to get a 70 on both parts. I barely passed one part. And it was one of the best days of my life. I'm 18 years old. I'm driving back on this piece of crap car I spent for $400, the holes in the bottom of it. I have this cheap Marshall's outfit. I've been grinding. I have a baby coming. Yeah. And I went to the office with the best smile, and I said, here you go. And he said, all right, I'm going to replace you in the mailroom. I'm going to give you an opportunity. So I had to train a guy. He came in, trained him. And then eventually, because of all the things I did, he had me work for the top broker, which was fantastic because he was already kind of number one most of the time, but we were number one every month. We never looked back. And that process was even better because I started out working everybody in the office even more, to the point where I knew that I had to get on my own. So I did everything I possibly could. And then at 20, I got my launching to be my own broker and work for myself. And then at 21, I was making close to $1 million a year, and I bought my house back off ironically, this is a crazy story. It's all in my book. The home I grew up in went for sale that my parents lost, and I purchased it for $540,000. And I moved into this home at 21, buying the home that I grew up in.
Wow, that is a great story.
Yeah,
to be able to do that.
It was wild. I moved my daughter in there with, she was now like almost 2.5, with my ex-wife, and we were in this big house. I mean, big to us. Yeah. And I never forget it. And I had a Mercedes, and I was making literally like $700,000-800,000 a year at 21 years old. And I also started. That's when my sports betting started, kind of, because now I'm here.
You got some extra money. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then check this out. I mean, think about this. I have a company where kids, I call them kids because I was a kid, were making ridiculous amounts of money and spending it, as you can imagine, on the dumbest things, one being gambling. So I took advantage of that. I said, you know what? I'm the bookie here, so bring it on. And so I started making tons of money taking sports bets. And that's when I realized, right around, I'm going to say Y2K-ish area, because the internet became bigger. That's when I really scaled my business, because I realized I can only handle so many phone calls, through just a regular cell phone, and taking bets during half times and everything else. And when the internet came, I exploded. I went to Costa Rica. I was one of the forefront bookmakers that did that. They had these websites that they created. I created my website, and I was able to scale my business. And that's when, basically, I would say for the next year or two, I went from like literally maybe 50 customers to 300 to 400. And those numbers were big because I was taking big bets, you know, back then $5,000, $10,000 bets were huge.
Sure.
And so I was taking those kind of bets. And so I started making a ton of money in the sports betting world, and I loved it. I mean, for me, a guy who gambles and loves sports, you can't really mix anything better than
Oh
that.
yeah. It's
You
like,
know,
it's like the alcoholic owning the bar. So
exactly.
Matt, did you think at that time, because it got big and you scaled it and you were handling it, did you think, oh wow, maybe that this is a risk that I'll only do it for a little bit, or was it this is just I'm in the moment, I'm taking it, I'm running with it, I don't care because I'm loving what I'm doing.
You know, it's a great question. When I think back to that time, I never associated sports betting, being a bookie, as the law
Mhm.
of trouble, because I didn't harm people, I didn't threaten people, and I was paying a lot of taxes. Not really all on my, you know, sports betting stuff, but so much on the regular income.
Yeah.
And I viewed it as a hobby,
Hmm.
even though it became a business. And because I wasn't involved in the mafia, and you know, back then that's when the mob controlled a lot of that. Not in
Hmm.
California, of course, but
On the
and I
East
never,
Coast. Yeah.
yeah, it was more of an East Coast thing, and I
Yeah.
never viewed my business getting to be as big as it did.
Hmm.
So I, you know, gradually things just really exploded, and then I realized, man, I have a pretty good business here. And then what happened was I got jaded. I got jaded in a sense of I didn't even want to wear a suit and tie and come to work anymore, because it was actually hard work. And I
Hmm.
found the sports betting business, which was hard work, but it was
Something
enjoyable.
you
But
loved. Yeah.
yeah, as you know, you do something you love, it's not really work anymore.
Right.
So that competition between those two, you know, businesses was difficult. And also, to be honest with you, this is going to sound crazy to you, but it's what I say in my book. Morally, I actually felt 100 times better taking sports bets than I did trading commodities.
That's interesting.
It was really rough for me. The commodity business was morally, in my opinion, absolutely terrible. We were calling old people who were all across the country, who were trying to persuade them to give us their retirement money, knowing
Hmm.
that 90% of the people lose. And there was like, no, I mean, if you want to be a top sales guy, you're going to have to grind and do things that are morally not the best. And, you know, you call a farmer in Iowa and he's got $1 million to his name, and you're trying to grab 500,000 of it, knowing that he's probably going to lose most of it. I don't care who you are. That's got to sit with you morally. And it didn't for me at first. And then it wore on me over time. I didn't really understand what I was doing the first 2 years. I just was working and
Hmm.
being a salesman. I understood that sounds a little victimish, but I meant like I didn't really understand the true um, power or morally what I was doing that I felt to be really wrong until later. But because it was legal, and because, you know, everybody kind of, you know, they had all these disclosures, and
Hmm.
you know, I felt like, hey, it's okay. But over time, I really look back and I was disgusted with that business, and it was good to me financially, but bad to me mentally. And I chose to do it though. I was greedy, and I chose to keep doing it. I even chose to open my own brokerage firm at 28 years old, and I had a company for about 2 years. But I walked away from all of it at about 30 because I hated it, and I also knew that I had this really conglomerate business that was, you know, not only paying for every part of my lifestyle, but providing me amazing income and lifestyle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So were
So
you at that time, Matt, by creating this huge company off to the side, were were you also partaking in gambling? And was that getting, if you were, was that getting bigger and bigger?
yeah, actually, something I talk about in my book a lot, which is getting high on your own supply.
Yeah.
That was me. My appetite for gambling increased as I made more money, to the point where if I was still a bookmaker today, I would be betting. As an example, in 2023, I was raided by the feds in October. But in February of 2023, I bet $4.6 million on the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl,
Oh God.
which is the largest bet I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And in 2024, if I wasn't raided by the FBI, I'm very confident I would have bet even more,
Yeah.
because it just, my appetite
It
got
was
bigger
all
and
just,
bigger.
yeah.
Yeah, the gambling addiction, for me, the less I bet, the less it meant to me,
Hmm.
and the less it excited me.
It almost made
And
you had to feel it more. And the only way to feel it more was to bet more.
yeah, you have the addiction is so sick that if I bet 2 million, I felt like I lost 3 million by not betting five, and
Hmm.
even if I won.
Hmm.
And then if I lost, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm pissed I lost 2 million. Let me go try to win the 2 million back. So either way, you're losing, mentally. At least for me, I'm talking about
And,
myself. I'm
and I'm curious too, Matt, like when you're growing a company, because I had a company that was, we were national, 25 states, and we had other things we were doing, a couple of other companies, but this thing scaled to a pretty good size. Did you have issues with people that, would bet and you had to follow? What do you do with someone who's betting with you who you don't have all the leverage because it's not legal? So
right.
what's your leverage with them?
My leverage was I was very aggressive without being aggressive.
Yeah.
I would make them uncomfortable. Younger parts of my life, my ego was involved more. I would go to their house,
Yeah.
knock on their door, make them uncomfortable. Kind of, I'm a bigger guy, so I would represent, I have tattoos and things like that. So I think my ego was like, oh, I'm going to make you feel intimidated. I never hurt people or put my hands on people, but that part of my life, I wish I could redo
Mhm.
because going back to that, it's not something I'm proud of, but especially for my kids to hear. But
Well, and I'm sure as you got bigger and your bets got bigger, you get more sophisticated people. I mean, you're running with a crowd that can bet that money too.
yeah, and then of course you're taking advantage of more because you're able to give more credit. And but I learned later in my life that if I extend too much credit, it's really my error. It's my error in judgment. I learned to turn it to, as opposed to blaming them, I'm blaming myself because I also had a gambling problem. So like you have to understand the person's addiction,
Yeah.
and I truly didn't feel good about that's the moral part of being
Yeah.
a bookmaker. I hated, and I don't care if you're doing it legally or illegally, it's still
Hmm.
happening, which we will talk about because that's a whole nother part of the world's problem right now
Hmm.
that people aren't discussing. But the reality is I definitely was chasing money and always constantly dealing with liars, and which I was a gambler. I understood all that. So I think that helped me though, because I knew exactly what they felt like and what they're
Yeah.
going through.
Yeah.
And, I really learned to blame myself when someone didn't pay me, which happened all the time. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sitting, but I was really good at kind of working things out with players and having a relationship, because that's
Hmm.
really at the end of the day why my business became what it was, is I built a really good relationship with the clients to
Hmm.
where even if they didn't have the money, just talk to me, let's communicate. I'll even let you still gamble if
Hmm.
you are making payments and working things out. And I think other bookmakers just draw the line, cut them off, and like kind of are cold.
And you kind
um,
of understood them. I mean, you
I
understood the
very
other
much.
side of the fence.
There's been many times, Brent, where I couldn't pay my debt
Yeah.
with a bookmaker, with casinos,
Yeah.
with life,
Yeah.
with even right now I owe the IRS $9 million
Yeah.
between state and federal. So who am I to throw stones at glass houses, right? Of these guys or even women that can't pay their tab or went over their head or had an addiction that led them down to making bad decisions. I mean, I'm guilty of it, so I can't be over here judging these people, right?
Well, and your world, continued to step into all the good stuff. You know, you were making money. Obviously, you had the gambling of your own on the side, but you had the celebrity culture, you had the
Mhm.
material things, you had flying around and just so your world got big, and
Big
in a
time.
way that most people don't experience. And did you feel like it was fleeting or that it was growing?
I don't want to glorify the lifestyle too much because it was, I can't lie, it was incredible. But the ways I had to go to get that were the problem, right? That's why I'm sitting
Yeah.
here today dealing with the consequences, which I struggle with explaining to people because, I don't want to lie and say that I didn't enjoy
Right.
flying on private jets and
Right. Right.
gambling. I did. But the means I took to get there are the things I should have changed, right? Like I have the talent, and I actually want to tell you a story. I had probably 4 years ago with my wife. I had a conversation. I said, I feel like a failure, and she's like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, we have a lot of money. We have all the cars. We have all the trips. We have all the
Mhm.
houses, whatever, diamond ring. We have all everything we could want materially. I said, but there's something empty inside me in it, and I didn't know what it was, but I do now. I chose something illegal and the fast, easy, quick buck,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of benefits to what I did and why I did it, but the moral inside emptiness was not going and running. Why couldn't I just be a CEO of some conglomerate business
Yeah.
that's legal and
Yeah. You're
you
smart
know
enough.
100% and
Right.
work harder or figure it out. Show my kids that even though I'm going to teach them a lot from this moment,
Mhm.
I didn't have to go through this to teach them that. I could have did it, legally, and
Yeah.
I could have actually made more money. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
reason I couldn't have made $1 billion or been a billionaire. So, and I know that. So I do feel at moments that I've failed many times in my life, but at the same time, I can't go backwards, and all I could do is recalibrate, which is why I call my book that, which I've had to do many times in my life. And recalibrating now at 50 is a little harder than at 20 or 30. Let's
It
be
is.
real.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's an excuse. There's no reason I can't make a billion
Right.
bucks between now and 65 or between now and 60 even. So, and I plan on doing that. I swear to you, I plan on
And
having
I
the
think you will.
conversation.
And I think that's a good place. I'm going to take a break here because I want to talk about how things have that the moment when things happen to you, and then how you strategically, mindset wise, decided to step forward. Because I think that's such a big part of your story. Before we do that, I know a lot of people don't like how they show up online. A lot of people think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation online on Google. Well, there's hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch or you're repairing yourself from results from a negative news story, Discoverability can also help you how you portrayed on the popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co. .co. It's not .com. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners for Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with the coupon code Nightmare Success. And Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonus.org. Prisonus.org. So, Matt, always when we're at this point in the show is people make it to this peak. And I think it's interesting that you almost had a feeling of an emptiness when you were at that peak, which is kind of fascinating in itself because
Right.
you were at a peak there where everybody who's never had that thinks, well, how could that be? And and what you find when you make a lot of money, and this is an opinion, but I think what you find when you make a lot of money is you just don't worry about money anymore.
Right.
You have all the other things, your kids and who's being mean to them at school and are they
Hmm.
going to get to be able to be on that team or whatever. That has nothing to do with money. You just don't worry about money anymore. That part of your life is something you don't worry about. It's the
Right.
other part of things that come in. But when you get into this this situation where you've gotten big, you get into a world now where now you're dealing with people that in our situation, we're talking about a big sports story um, with the biggest guy that's in baseball. I mean, Showtime is the biggest. He's there's nobody. He's from
Nobody
Japan
bigger.
and
Right.
designated hitter, or pitcher. And then there's this interpreter guy that's got a gambling problem,
Right.
and you meet him, and there's a connection. Of course, he likes you. All the people. When that all started happening, did you think that there was anything that was going to happen that you could get pulled into a bad situation, or did it just feel like a normal transaction you were having with everybody else?
You know, when you have the eyes of when I first saw a wire transfer from the name of Shohei Ohtani,
Yeah,
I knew
that would
that was
get your attention.
yeah, I knew that was really bad and really good. Good because I was egotistically hungry for money and
Yeah,
financially, I knew that there would probably be no lack of concern of getting paid.
right.
But
Exactly.
bad as far as eyes on me, continue to worry about, oh my gosh, this is the biggest athlete in the world, especially
Right.
now. But I will tell you, one of my mistakes was misreading when the FBI raided me in 2014, which was 9 years before I got raided again recently. They came into my home, and so I've been raided twice. When they came in, they came in, it was 14 of them. They grabbed the money, and I signed an abandonment form.
Okay.
I think they valued me at that time, in my opinion, to be a bookmaker, but not harming the community and paying taxes because I was to be not a
Not a threat.
worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they took the money. I signed the forms over. I was honest with them. I said, "What do I do? I'm probably going to go right to Verizon and get a phone and kind
Right.
of start it up again, so to speak." And that's exactly what I did. So 9 years went by before they came again, right? And so I kind of thought I had a get out of jail free card because I wasn't harming people, because I wasn't threatening, and because I did pay a lot in taxes, not the proper amount, obviously. But I
But
kind
that
of
would
hear,
give you a false sense of security.
yeah, it did,
That
it
would
did,
give you the feeling, well, if I do get into a situation, my last situation wasn't that bad.
right. And that was my thinking, which was wrong. But not to make excuses, but I definitely felt like, okay, I can continue my business, and actually it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Clearly, as I got more celebrities and professionals, and
Mhm.
even a couple actors, and that part of my life was like, okay, it's hard to even turn away the money and also turn away the eyes because I'm already so big and I have so many of these famous people,
Yeah,
etc., betting with me, and frankly, my ego thrived on it. Like here
sure.
I am playing golf with Charles Barkley and Travis
Yeah.
Kelce, and I've played golf with Jim McMahon and Sean Payton and Golden Tate and Adam Thielen. I can go on and on. I've been bumping elbows with Dana White at tables in Vegas. I mean, like
Were
those
you
type
able
of
to
things.
fix Charles Barkley's swing? I know he
Mine's
went
so
through
bad
Hank
in itself.
Haney. He went through everybody.
He actually stopped the hitch when I was playing with him.
Okay.
But in truth, mine's pretty bad, so I couldn't make fun of him too much. I'm better than he is, but that doesn't say much. But he's a great guy. We had a great time, on the course and even
Yeah.
gambling afterwards. He fires it up pretty big in the casinos, and
Yeah.
sadly, my addiction's worse than his. So I was betting more than he was, which is funny because they all kind of were slightly enamored by me because here I was, especially when I was even younger. I was 30, 35,
Mhm.
betting huge numbers, and they were just like, "Who is this guy? And what the hell does he do?"
Yeah.
But I had this aura around me of people that were successful that I would bring like a crew of my friends.
Mhm.
So we kind of had this little entourage of, but none of us did drugs. We weren't into that. So the Vegas. Okay. So anyway, that part was, it was tough because I was juggling like, do I tell people no? I mean, I'm not going to say no to bringing on business,
Mhm.
but I'm also getting these possible more eyes on me clearly, which is what ended up happening.
Mhm.
And but I also enjoyed it, egotistically. So, I always felt like I was fighting a couple things, and with my ego as well.
So when things started, did you feel like that there was heat on you? I mean, sometimes people I have had so many different people on this show. It's by surprise, and it's a knock on the door, or they're raided, or somebody feels like there's something going on, and they feel paranoid, and that something's going to happen. What was that with you, Matt?
For me, it was definitely not that. I was October 5th was a morning. I was walking out to my car with my son, and I own a jiu-jitsu studio called Risk here in California, and my professor that owns the studio with me is a great friend of mine. He came over to play with my son, and we were going to take him to the park, give my wife a break. So at like 9:35 a.m., I was putting my son in his car seat, and my wife has a G-Wagon, so I had the door open, and I heard FBI freeze. And truthfully, I didn't even understand what the hell. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like friends. And as I kind of look on the other side of the door, I had 8 red dots on me with full AR rifles and the full tactical gear, and there was 29 of them with the dog, 29 agents, 3 women, I believe, and that's when I knew it was real, because they were very serious. And then, of course, they secured the premise on the outside first, and then they went in to grab my wife, and it just made me sick, because this poor woman's just sitting there in the house, and she thought that she was being, going to be raped and home invasion. She wasn't sure. So when she found out it was FBI, she was actually happy. Of course, she came out crying, and that face I'll never forget, which is all my fault, of course, and I can't take that away. But I was able to. They didn't handcuff me because I was holding my son. I was able to try to remain calm and keep him from realizing what is going on, because he was only 2 at the time. But he's a pretty sharp kid, and he definitely could feel the tension, especially when my wife came out crying. So they wouldn't let me go to her, of course, because they're securing her. And then, as you've been through it, it's probably 12, 13 minutes later after the dog, and they go through every part of your house to secure it. Then they bring in the next team to go find the money and whatever else they're looking for. But that was a 8-hour process. And then I just felt it. I felt, this time it's not going to be.
So this is big.
Yeah. And I was big. So, I really probably ran the largest volume sports book in the world. There's a lot of bookmakers.
That's what it says. I mean, if you look at yourself up, it talks about you being as far the best are the biggest that's known. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Volume wise, for sure. I mean, think about it. I had the interpreter bet $326 million through my website.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that alone is
It's a lot
astronomical. Of money. Yeah. But I probably only had at my peak maybe 1,200 clients. I know some people have 2,000, but they don't take the volume. I was taking the volume, the bigger.
Yeah, you had an exclusive club, basically.
Correct. Exactly.
So, Matt, what's going through your mind? I mean, it's such a intrusion, and your wife is involved, your 2-year-old son's involved. What are you immediately thinking?
It's funny. You have so many thoughts. You've been through it. My first thing was, wow, what's going to happen with my future? How am I going to recalibrate my situation immediately? Because I already knew. I kind of, in my mind, I was like, this isn't. I'm not going to be able to just pick this back up and be a bookmaker. Yeah. So I knew that my life was changing drastically, right? But then I started thinking about, I have 5 kids, and even though I still had money, I knew it was going to be taken. And I knew that my financial situation was going to be really tough to overcome regardless of what happens. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, what am I going to do? Like, truly next, even at that moment, which people were asking me all the time, like, really? I said, yeah, I mean, within minutes I was calling my attorney, obviously. And then my next thought pattern was, what do I do? I got to go to work. I got to figure this out, mm-hmm. Which is when I started writing the book. I mean, within a few weeks, I was already writing a book, and then I hired Justin's team, and then I went right to work on everything from mindsets. I mean, I did have probably about.
How did you find Justin, by the way? Because he's been on this show. He's a friend of both of ours. How did you find him?
Luckily, my attorney recommended him.
Okay.
Yeah, and she said, "Look, he can really help you," and I immediately hired him. And then when I met him, he was a great source of help just to get my mindset to go to work. I already was there, but he really helped me kind of calm down, because they handle so many things of mitigation for you.
Right.
And, obviously I've never been through a federal case. I've been raided, but never been through an actual case. Mm-hmm. So I had so many questions that he answered, and his team has been great even to this day. But I knew immediately right there that my mindset was my strongest point. That's what I had that most people don't have. So I knew that I could recalibrate and figure this out. I just didn't know where or how, but I knew that. So I asked questions.
Did you feel like at that time when you're thinking about this whole thing of like, what am I going to do? Recalibrate. Were you also thinking that this was going to blow up into a gigantic story?
Not to this level. No, yeah. I really didn't. I didn't think that I would have channel 4, 5, 7, all at my house. I didn't think I'd have interpreters from Japan coming to my jiu-jitsu studio,
Right.
coming to my house, walking my dogs, following me with cameras. I didn't think that I would be on. Literally, I'll never forget when my wife and I turned on the TV just randomly in March when the story broke was the Shohei part.
Mhm.
I didn't think I'd turn on the TV and see my picture blasted on every channel, like for like a good 2 minute segment,
Mhm.
and pictures of me, my family, etc. So that part was like, holy, this is real. And then of
Big
course
deal.
that means you start thinking that everywhere I go when I walk out my house, that everyone's watching me or paying attention, or that's the guy. And of course the public media is really good at, their narrative is never the best. And
Right.
so now I look predatory. I look like a monster. I look like an evil person. And that part's really rough because even my kids go to school and they're hearing things and getting questions, and you can't defend yourself. And I was told not to say anything, don't even respond, and that is hard for me because even if my response is bad, I would rather respond, because I'm just defensive of myself and my family.
Well, and I think that's what I want to talk about because what you've done has almost talk about recalibrated. It has shown a path that almost 99.9% of the people, especially under a federal indictment, state indictments are one thing and federal indictments another thing, but you have the weight of the United States of America that comes down on you and says versus your name. That's a lot to just breathe in.
Right.
And your immediate thing is to, oh my God, what am I going to do? And there's this whole shock thing that happens at first. But what your thing was, Matt, that I find really it's fascinating because it's a fight or flight thing.
Right.
And your immediate thing was is I'm going to write a book. I'm fighting this thing out. All the media is going to have their narrative. We know it's not good. Anybody who's seen somebody that's indicted knows it's not good. You decide to take a path to get your own story out there, to have people get in tune with you and
Sure.
learn about your story through all of this that's going on. I think that is incredibly instructive to a lot of people who are dealing with something like this because there's a fork in the road.
Right.
Which way do you go?
Sure.
Your fork in the road, and I'm sure you had a lot of people, including your attorney, say, "Don't you say anything.
Correct.
Don't you dare talk to the press. Don't you
Mhm.
dare get on social media." And you did exactly the opposite. Walk us through that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. My attorney is Diane Bass. She's fantastic. She's been not only a great attorney, but almost a friend. Well, she is a friend now. But even initially, she's really resignated. She's even told me how stupid I am at times, which I appreciate because I'm a blunt, straightforward guy. And even though she's called me stupid and said some of the things I've done is stupid, they probably are. But I also have to live my life, and it's me, right? When I wake up, just like you, it's your life, and I want to dictate the terms as best as I can. Being under a federal indictment, you're a little limited on some of the terms because you have a lot of rules and eyes on you, as you know. My phone's being monitored. My house is being monitored. We have home visits. I have to report, as you know. I have to go down and do drug tests, which is ironic because I don't do drugs, and stand in line and pee in front of an officer watching
It's
you.
very dehumanizing.
Yeah, very much. And then, I don't know about you, but I've had stage fright multiple
Me
times. I'm like,
too.
oh, I can't pee. It's like, and the guy's turning the faucet on and off, trying to help you. And then he tells you you have 30
Uh,
more seconds and there's more pressure. I'm just like, and then I was
Matt,
told that, yeah,
I've gotta tell you,
tell me.
both of us are talking about stage fright. I was actually in Leavenworth in prison,
Okay.
and I had been there for almost 3 years, and then they had these random drug tests that they would do, and so I had gotten to the point where whenever I got back from working, I wouldn't go to the bathroom because I knew that they did the random tests, and so I always wanted to make sure that I could go.
Yeah, you have a full
And
bladder.
so yeah, so after 3 years, I had gotten just lazy on the thinking, and so sure enough, I'm coming out of the bathroom stall and or the urinal, and Stroby yells at me. He said, "Cassity, they called your name." I was like, "Oh no!"
You're like, I'm not
It's
going to be able to do this.
And so they only give you like 3 or 4 ounces of water. So it's not like you
Right.
don't have anything to start up with.
Of course.
They give you 2 hours. And I waited until the very end. This big, huge, burly guy that does it. I mean, and there they are. You're in a, the fluorescent room and in
Uh-huh.
this little bitty tiny bathroom.
Right.
And I can't go.
Yeah.
And so if you can't go in prison, they take you to the hole.
Yeah. That's what I've
And
heard.
and so it's winter time. It's freezing cold out, Kansas at Leavenworth. And so this big burly guy says, "Come on outside with me."
Oh
And
boy.
I'm thinking, oh man, this doesn't sound good.
Right.
Either I'm going to the hole or he's raping me, whatever the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So I get outside. I'm outside the prison. He said, "Take your shirt off." I said, "What? Excuse me?" He said, "Take your shirt off." And so I literally take my shirt off and I've got this cup and I start peeing in this cup. And I was like, holy shit. And he said, "Yeah, it always works." And
Oh
I was
wow.
like, I was only 5 minutes away from going to the hole. And
That's crazy. So taking your shirt off actually helps, huh?
I never knew that.
Well, I might try that because I'll be honest with you. The first time was really rough. I'll tell you what happened to me. I've never done it before. I stand in line, and not to be judgmental, but the guys in line don't exactly look like the guys you want to hang out with. Let's just say it that way. And so I'm just like, what am I doing here? And anyway, they look like they've done a lot of drugs. So when they call you back there, I've never done this before. The guy's like, "All right, pee here," and he's staring at you, and I can't, and I'm just looking at him. I'm like, so then I thought I'd be funny. I said, "Can you at least buy me a drink next time?" And he didn't think that was funny.
Oh,
So anyway, he's like, "You got 30 seconds." He's turning on and off the faucet. Finally,
yeah.
I'm able to pee. Then he tells me it's not, what's the word? It's not, well, basically it's too clear. There's a word for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Because
So
you
anyway,
drank too much water or something. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and he says to me, "Well, you got to go. Whatever the word was for it, you got to go down and get a bagel and cream cheese or something and some coffee and come back." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I peed plenty of pee." And he's like, "Well, it's too clear." And I said, "Well, I don't eat bagels and cream cheese. I'm healthy. like I work out.
Don't do carbs.
Yeah, I try to eat clean, And he's like, "Oh, not today, bud." And I was like, "Wow." So I had to go have a cup of coffee and eat a bagel and cream cheese and come back and do it all over again. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So yeah, that's traumatizing. At least to me, it was.
Oh yeah.
I sound like a baby, but anyway, that stuff is rough. So, but now that I'm dealing with all of that, and there's more, right? I'm just scratching the surface. You've been through it. The mindset has to be so strong to overcome all of these adversities and still be, not go in depression and
Right.
not, I could see how people end up going back to drugs or drinking or even gambling or whatever your addictions are, all
Right.
three, right?
Stress
And
level.
it is, it's, the anxiety is really high, but I have to be, the advocate for my family of strength and, show them that, because if they see me crumble, they're going to crack and crumble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had tough conversations. When this first happened with my wife, I pulled her aside. I've been with her 10 years now, and I said to her, I said, "Nicole, you are a beautiful 30. She's 38, 38-year-old woman. We have one child together. You have your own business. We have separate entities as far as our finances. We didn't join, thank God." I said, "You can walk out of this relationship right now and just punt on this whole thing." And I actually don't blame you. Like, even though we love each other more than anything, like, I actually think it's probably your best interest. It'll break my heart, and I'll hate every minute of it, but I think you should consider that. And I kind of laid it all out for her because I didn't know what this is going to be like. You do now that you've been through it. Now I do, but I knew it was going to be rough. And she said to me, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, and I was like, thank God, because I wanted to give her that option. Because I would have told everybody that, things didn't work out, and I wouldn't have
Right.
blamed it on her just being disloyal, or because it wasn't that.
Right.
Anyway, she probably, if she's here today in front of you, she might say, "I wish I would have jumped on that." But in truth, we've become even better and stronger and closer. As you know,
That's such a big deal though, Matt, what you just said, because you gave her an option. You felt the worst that you could feel about somebody who's having to ride along with you. Um, but boy, it's such a big deal. I was lucky. My wife, Julie, was, uh, the best. And I look back on it as a role model to my 3 daughters.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she was one of the wives that drove 4 hours one way, 8 hours for a visit,
Wow.
every weekend, and it kept us together. And
Sure.
but going through what you guys have gone through, it does it welds you together,
You're
and
right.
you're
You're
fighting the
right.
world together. Yeah,
And that's amazing for your 3 kids to see your wife, not only be loyal, but to be committed
yeah,
to you and your marriage and to your family. You could see how people can't handle it. Like
mm,
it's not even her fault. Like if your wife couldn't handle it, you can't
right.
blame her. Like
No,
I get it. I don't even think it's disloyalty. I think it's just too much.
that's just what you
And
can handle.
yeah, and so I understand why a woman would leave a man or vice versa. I mean, I'm not that guy, and my wife isn't, and you and your wife aren't,
Mhm.
but I don't even look down on the people that don't because it is a lot to take on, and you have that stress of are they coming back and unannounced visits, and we don't know what's coming next. Am I going to prison? How long am I going to prison? What's our finances going to look like?
Yeah,
How are we going to keep our kids in the schools? How are
all
we going to
that.
make money?
So
I
much.
mean,
It's so much to think about.
yeah.
Everything you just said. It's a checklist of, oh my God.
Right. And I'm not even
Yeah,
covering all of them. You know that. There's 20 more that we're not even covering that are
yeah,
seem minute compared to what we're talking about, but they're not. It's like,
yeah.
how about the fact that when you have 3 kids and they go somewhere, especially initially, like they're associated with their dad being in prison or felon, and it's like that nobody knows the real backstory of Brent and who he
Right.
is, of what kind of family guy he is, and what kind of dad he is, and you can't even defend it because they're not. You don't have an opportunity to defend it a lot of times. So my Instagram, which you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
I started 8 months ago. I've never been on social media my entire life. Don't even didn't even know how to post. So I made that decision because I knew that I needed to represent. Well, initially I did it as a monetization plan
Mm-hmm.
for my book, to be honest. Which
Yeah,
you don't make much money on books, but I just wanted to get it out there.
yeah.
And then what I found is very healing to tell people the truth, be
Mm-hmm.
authentic, and I'm getting so much more um, outreach. I mean, it's a lot of hate too. People that want to talk about me and glorify
There
my
will always be
story.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, and I realize the hate is actually means I'm doing something right.
right. It's on
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So they're just miserable in their own lives, and they like to cast hate on people they don't even know. But I love the support and the nice comments and the people that actually follow my story and I'm helping in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have trials, tribulations in life, and they don't have to be this massive, but we still deal with them. And if I help somebody from making a poor decision in their life
Mm-hmm.
because of my quote or because of something I said,
Which
then
you have
I'm
great quotes on there, by the way.
oh,
Uh,
thank you.
the, every day you've got something that's it's like, yes, that's
Yeah, I
right.
appreciate it. It actually helps me too, right? Like, this, a teacher teaches, but they're really getting empowerment of teaching because it reminds us all, we all get complacent in life. Appreciation, gratitude, humility, these are things that we tend to forget. But when you resonate it every day and put it on even just an Instagram, for me, it's a reminder of like, yeah, wow, this quote is so true, and these are things that remind me of when I
Mm-hmm.
walk out every day that I need to focus on and being a better father, a better person, a better husband, just a better human, and the moral of the story of my Instagram really started as I thought, oh, I'm just going to get my book out there. And now I am defending myself. I am telling parts of my story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to be a little bit careful of what I say because I don't want to say too much that could hurt my case, which I'm sure I already have. But I am being authentic and honest. And, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm not a victim. I chose this path. I
Well,
got to deal with it.
and Matt, it was like when you and I were talking is earlier. I really wanted to talk to you about your mindset. A lot of people can read about your case. It's a huge case. You can Google and talk and do whatever. Um, what's fascinated me is, and I wonder, was it a surprise to you how, I mean, 8 months ago, you're almost at 100,000 followers on
Right.
Instagram. Did that, like, what did you think about that?
I don't know. I didn't know anything about Instagram, so I didn't even understand it really. I mean, I knew what it was, but
Yeah.
I used to make fun of everybody who was on it, ironically, because I thought my perception of Instagram was beautiful girls just trying to get guys to look at their boobs and their
Everybody's
body.
the best life, best
Yeah.
vacation,
So
best dinner, right?
going, yeah, the glorifying parts of life. And I'm guilty of that too. Like
Sure.
I understand that. Like I want to show the best sides of me, but I've tried to not do that. I've tried to show both sides, right? Because there's, my wife I deem to be beautiful, and I talk about that. But that doesn't mean that there are moments where we feel ugly, right? Like, I mean, there's moments of I talk about, poor decisions I made, or I should have did this or should have did that. It's not all, I was on a private jet or this and that, because
Hmm.
that's not how life is.
Right.
But that was my view. Now, what I've gotten out of it to get to 85,000 or whatever it is just being honest and authentic, so that the people who are following me actually give a damn and get
Hmm.
something out of it. And if I help them, it's healing for me. And then also it reminds me of, like I said, things I need to improve on. It's just accountability. And then I do heal by talking about my problems and owning them. And I feel like, when you own your shit, as I say, and you are honest,
Hmm.
the truth always sets you free. For me in life, I've always just jumped off the cliff when it comes to dealing with adversity, as opposed to backing away from it. I'll give you an example. When I was a commodity trader, and let's say the guy had a $100,000 loss, and I hated making that phone call. Most of the traders in our office would like go for lunch, put it off, wait till the guy calls. That's exactly what I didn't do. I hated making that call. I would just dial his phone number, and it started ringing, and I would deal with it. And the minute I hung up, I felt 100,000 times better, because number one, I was honest. Number two, I dealt with it, and the anxiety of sitting on it was
Yeah.
even worse, right? And
Eat the
that's
shit
the
sandwich in the morning, right?
yeah. And you'll see my quote, or one of the messages I just put on Instagram. What is it like to eat a shit sandwich for the whole world to see? And and then I posted the next quote was something about my wife, right?
Mhm.
But the reality is, at the end of the day, like, we all feel, when we're in traumatizing moments,
Mhm.
we all feel like it's the end of life. Like you're, oh my god, this is the end of the world. But the reality is, it's just temporary. Whether you were in prison, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure when you're going to prison, and I'm sure when I go to prison, it's going to feel like I just want to die, for a minute.
Mhm.
But we all know that. Look at where you're at now, and look at where I'll be, right? So it's temporary. It sucks. It's painful, and it's a hard moment. But all of those moments that we've had in our life, I don't care who you are, going back to when you're young, which is even more traumatic, because everything's like, oh my god. You get through it, and you're fine on the other side, and you just have to understand that. So my mind frame is like, no matter what comes my way, I'm going to deal with it. And who knows? I mean, I could get hit by a car tomorrow
Right.
and end my life, or I could get cancer tomorrow
Right.
morning and find out. Like, and that would
No
be rough.
guarantees.
No, we don't. So I live every day. I try to experience the best moments with the people I love, and I try to be more present. That's one thing I've gotten out of this, probably more than anything. I was very non-present with my children a lot, because I had so much money on football games or baseball games or my business, and I also love gambling, so it sucked me in. And now that I don't gamble and I don't have all this exterior stuff going on, I'm so much more present. I'm so much better of a father and a person and a husband. So I'm blessed. I actually am slightly grateful that the FBI raided my home,
Mm.
because all the trauma has led me to be a better person. And I know I'm going to make more money than I ever have. There's no doubt about it. And I know I'll pay the government every dollar I owe 'em.
Do you think that's your biggest takeaway through it all?
Yeah, being more present, being a
Yeah.
better person, being morally, waking up, looking in the mirror, and feeling so much better about who I am, and owning my shit, and
Yeah.
actually telling people who judge me, I can try to flip the script as best I can. And the ones who don't, it's okay. I can't make everybody love me or like me, and I don't expect them to, because I'm not the person that everybody should love or like, because I'll tell you how I feel about you too. I'm
Right.
okay with telling somebody I think they're an idiot, or I think they're a scumbag, or whatever. I don't go around casting hate on Instagrams like some people, but like, if I know you and I think you're wrong, I'll tell you you're wrong. And
Yeah.
you should respect that, right? And I'm okay with people telling me that what I'm doing, like, I get it all the time. Oh, you're just flaunting this, or you're only talking about this because you got caught. Well, yeah, of course, that's why I'm talking about it.
Right.
You're right, but I'm talking about it because I'm owning it and I'm
Right.
trying to recalibrate and be a better. What do you want me to do? I say to these people, like I respond to all these
Mhm.
negative haters, right? What do you expect me to do? Do you want me to go curl up in a ball and just become a loser and not be a good dad? Do you want me to cry every night? What is it that you want to see from me? I've made mistakes. Okay, you've made mistakes. I don't care who you
Everybody
are.
has.
Yeah, maybe mine are bigger and more poor choices than yours. Okay, so you're a better person than me. Congratulations. You know, it's like some. So I really get it. It's entertaining to me actually. But that being said, if I can give back and help somebody in need, which I have, I've had a gentleman who said he was going to kill himself on my
Yeah.
Instagram, DMing me saying that he just lost all this money and he wants to jump off a cliff. I don't know if I helped him save his life, but I definitely gave him all the best advice and told him that's absolutely insane to even think that. You know, money doesn't matter. You can always make more money. You'll figure it out.
Mhm.
I said at the end of the day, it feels like the worst pain in the world at this moment, but it will pass. And so I got some more feedback from him. You know, so he's still alive. But the point is, like, that's a very big example. But some people just tell me, you know what, your quote lifted me today, and instead of having a bad day, I had a great day. Stuff like that makes me feel good because
Well,
I'm
I
helping
got to
somebody.
tell you, Matt, the stuff that I see and how you post and what you post, um, I love it. I mean, because
I
I like
appreciate it.
that kind of stuff that you grab and say, "Oh, I can use that."
Yeah,
It makes me feel like I need to step in this differently, whatever it is. And I think you're doing that for a lot of people. And I'm confident. And I love the fact that you made time to come on this show because I know you've got a lot that's in front of you. But I am confident that, first of all, you're going to adapt to anything. You already
right.
have. You're handling things differently, more courageously than a lot of people, just because you've just decided, what the hell, uh, I'm I'm giving it the way I always have done it, and I'm going straight at it and knocking down barriers as I get there. That's why I'm confident that whatever happens, and I don't know if you, I hope for the best. So you get probation, whatever it is, you will be able to, because they can take so much,
Right.
but they can't take your brain. And as
That's
long
right.
as you realize that, whatever you're doing with your book, whatever you're doing with your Instagram, whatever you're doing with your documentary series, which I think will be phenomenal because you have so much to share,
Sure.
um, it's all going to be good, even though you're having to go through, what's that one country song? You're walking through hell, whatever it is,
Yeah.
get out as fast as you can, but you got to
Of
go.
course.
Um, but the way that you're handling things is courageous, and I admire it, really do.
I really appreciate it. It's yeah, I don't want to sit here and act like I don't have my tough moments where I want to sulk like a little baby and whine and poor me thing, but that victim role doesn't help anybody. I
No,
mean,
it takes all your strength away.
it does, and your mind is the most powerful muscle that we all have, and once you sharpen that tool, you're dangerous, and I
They're
mean dangerous in
dangerous.
a positive way. And I know I'm dangerous, and I remind myself every day, egotistically, that I am, so that when I do have a weak moment, it's there for a second, because we all have those voices, right? You have that devil and angel, and the more we listen to that devil, the more we go down dark paths.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the end of the day, you sharpen that tool, you can do anything you want. And I know that sounds cliche, but you really can. I
Oh,
mean,
you
there's no
can.
reason,
And like, talking about, helping professional athletes. Of course, you'll be able to help professional athletes. Of course, Damon West was on this show, and he, hell, I think he was sentenced to 56 years and was able to get out, I think, in 7 years. But his whole thing is he was a great athlete that wanted to talk to other athletes, and he started off being a hit in the SEC, and then he's just corporates and everything else, but he just had that desire, yeah,
right?
that want, that grit, and you've got all that, Matthew. But then what you're going to be able to give to people, walking out on the other side of this, is your whole life experience to plug into other people to help them. And that's, I know you're going to be able to do that because you already are. And I want to say, if anybody, we've talked a lot about this, but don't forget, it's at Mathew, and it's one T.
Correct.
It's at Mathew Bowyer 5. It's Boyer
B O
Mat
W BOWYER.
Bowyer. Um, and follow his Instagram. Well, it's worth the follow.
Thanks, Brent. I'm enjoying building. I'm enjoying giving back. And, at the end of the day, we're all human. We make mistakes, just like you and I both have. And we'll make many more.
Yeah,
But I promise you there'll be less. And I promise you there'll be better decisions. And we will learn from it. And that's all you can do.
that's all you can do.
But I want to help people. And the more I can, just like you are, you give back. And, it's all the power to you and your show and giving back to others and helping them through all that adversity.
I appreciate that. Talking about gratitude, Homestead Financial, home mortgage lets me use this podcast room and the equipment. And if you've got home mortgage needs out there, Greg Aftiev is your guy. He knows all the stuff. If you're looking for a book out there before Recalibrate gets out there, I've got one. It's Nightmare Success, Loyal to Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, Finally Breaking Free. Leave a review on Apple if you got time. Check me out on brentcassity.com. Leave me a message. And as I used to say to my people as I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Matt, thank you so much for being a guest here today. I think a lot of people got a lot of good stuff out of what you had to talk about.
No, thank you. I love your platform, and it's great to be on the show. So thank you so much.
All right, folks. Nightmare Success, in and out.